Across the developed world, pension systems are cracking under pressure, and the US is no exception. Decades ago, America had a large workforce supporting each retiree. Today, that number has dropped to fewer than 3, putting enormous strain on the system. And the situation abroad is even more alarming, as Japan has lost millions of working-age adults, while France spends a huge share of its entire economy just to cover pensions. The trend is the same everywhere. Fewer workers, more retirees, and a financial model that no longer adds up. Pension systems were created for a world where families were larger, and retirement lasted only a short part of a person's life. But that world has disappeared. People are living much longer, birth rates have fallen dramatically, and the numbers no longer add up. A growing share of the global population is moving into older age, while far fewer young workers are stepping in to support them. In most developed countries, fertility rates have dropped below what's needed to sustain the workforce, leaving fewer taxpayers to fund the rising costs of retirement. And even with these pressures increasing, most governments are still hesitant to address the problem head-on. The challenge is that any real solution would require people to work longer, contribute more, or accept smaller benefits. And no politician wants to campaign on that. Each option is wildly unpopular, so leaders avoid the issue entirely, even as the pressure begins to shake major economies. And based on the numbers, the situation is only heading in one direction: worse. This raises some big questions. Can the pension crisis actually be solved? What happens if we continue to delay? And is any country making meaningful progress at all? Meanwhile, another force is accelerating the uncertainty: the rapid rise of AI and how it's reshaping the job market. Almost half of workers around the world are worried that AI and new technology could cost them their jobs. What makes it even more unsettling is that most people don't think it will affect them until it suddenly does. That's why I've partnered with Outskill to offer a 2-day live AI training event that has already helped more than 10 million people upgrade their careers. They're hosting an intensive weekend workshop running from morning to evening, and normally it costs nearly $400 to attend. But as part of their major Black Friday offer, viewers of this channel can join completely free. This isn't one of those cheap AI hustle courses. It's taught by real experts from companies like Microsoft, OpenAI, NVIDIA, Google, and more. Over 2 days, you'll learn dozens of AI-powered tools, get hands-on with automation, and even start building your own AI workflows. If you want to level up your skills or grow your business using AI, grab your free spot through the link below before it fills up, and join their community so you don't miss any updates. For much of the last century, pensions were seen as one of society's biggest promises. You work, you pay into the system, and when you retire, the system supports you in return. It was a simple, reassuring deal, but only as long as the math stayed balanced, and today, that balance is breaking down. Most countries rely on what's known as a pay-as-you-go structure. The money workers contribute right now doesn't sit in a personal account or grow in a fund with their name on it. Instead, it immediately goes toward covering the benefits of people who are already retired. The whole system depends on having enough workers to keep it running. And that's exactly where the pressure is building. In a pay-as-you-go system, each generation funds the retirement of the one before it. And for a long time, that model worked smoothly. Strong economic growth and high birth rates meant there were more than enough workers to support the people collecting benefits. At one point, the United States had over 5 workers for every retiree, a huge base of contributors supporting a relatively small group of beneficiaries. But that balance has unraveled. Today, the ratio has dropped to only a few workers per retiree, even after accounting for the massive increase in women joining the workforce. The shift is far sharper than the numbers alone suggest, and the trend isn't limited to America. Across Europe, Japan, and South Korea, the worker-to-retiree ratios are even lower, putting enormous pressure on pension systems worldwide. In many countries, the number of active workers is dropping so low that there are only about 2 people supporting each retiree. Economists call this a dependency ratio crisis. Too few working adults trying to sustain too many people who are no longer in the labor force, and the impact is massive. For the United States, The most urgent threat is insolvency, the point where the system simply won't have enough incoming money to cover the benefits it has promised to millions of retirees. The United States operates the largest pension program on the planet, with tens of millions of Americans relying on Social Security. The system is funded by a payroll tax shared between workers and employers, which, at least in theory, should keep everything in balance. As long as enough people are paying in, there should be enough to cover those receiving benefits. But that balance is slipping. Projections show that Social Security's trust funds are on track to run out, leaving payroll taxes able to cover only a portion of the benefits promised. That would mean an automatic cut for retirees, a hit many Americans living on modest monthly checks simply cannot absorb. And inflation only makes things worse, reducing how far each dollar actually goes, even if the benefit amount stays the same on paper. And this isn't just a federal problem. Many state-run pension programs are also severely underfunded, adding another layer of risk for future retirees. Across the country, many state pension systems are in serious financial trouble. Collectively, they're short by well over $1 trillion, and in places like Illinois, New Jersey, and Kentucky, public retirement funds have barely a little more than half of what they need to cover their future obligations. In practical terms, that gap represents a significant portion of the income retirees in those states are counting on. So, while the federal system is strained by a lack of money, another major economy, Japan, faces an entirely different crisis. It's running out of people. Japan now has one of the oldest populations in the world, with a median age approaching 50. A huge share of its citizens are moving into retirement, while the number of working-age adults has dropped by millions. As a result, the country is spending a large portion of its entire economy just to keep its pension system running. But Japan's challenges go deeper than an aging society. It is also dealing with a lost generation of workers who never had a real chance to build retirement savings. After the collapse of Japan's economic boom, companies cut hiring, reduced wages, and pushed millions of young adults into temporary or part-time jobs. This period, known as the employment ice age, left many without benefits, job security, or access to the main pension system. Decades later, that same generation is now entering middle age with minimal savings and inconsistent pension contributions. Economists warn that as they retire, Japan could face a severe crisis. Millions of older citizens with almost no financial support. For a country already under massive strain, the growing cost of pensions, now larger than even its healthcare spending, is becoming an overwhelming burden. France isn't struggling with insolvency in the same way some countries are. Its crisis comes from the sheer weight pensions place on the national budget. The government has been forced to borrow heavily, pushing its public debt to some of the highest levels in the developed world. Pension spending now consumes a huge share of France's entire economy, meaning every dollar used to support retirees is a dollar that can't go toward healthcare, infrastructure, energy, defense, or balancing the national books. China faces a very different but equally serious problem. Its pension system is relatively young, yet the country is aging at a pace never seen before. Years of the one-child policy left China with too few young workers and a fast-growing elderly population. Hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens will soon be over 65, more people than the entire population of the United States. Government projections show that China's national pension fund could run dry within the next few years. And unlike richer countries, China hasn't had generations of widespread prosperity to build strong private savings. That means millions of retirees could end up relying on a system that may not be able to support them when they need it most. When you look at all these issues together, the global outlook becomes alarming. Experts estimate that the world is heading toward a massive pension shortfall, a gap worth hundreds of trillions of dollars between what people will need in retirement and what's actually being saved to cover those costs. That number is several times larger than the entire global economy. So if the warning signs are this obvious, what are governments doing about it? The truth is, not much. Most leaders are avoiding the problem entirely, even as the financial hole deepens year after year. Every realistic fix to the pension crisis creates short-term pain, and politicians rarely get rewarded for solving problems that play out over decades. That's why leaders across the political spectrum end up taking the same position. Social Security shouldn't be touched. Both major parties promise to protect it, avoid raising the retirement age, and reject any proposal that might reduce benefits. It's a stance designed to win elections, not to fix the underlying math. The truth is, repairing the system would require people to work longer, contribute more, or accept smaller monthly checks. And none of those ideas are popular. Democracies run on short election cycles, while pension systems depend on stability that spans generations. That gap between political timing and demographic reality is why the problem keeps getting pushed aside. Consider the simplest solution: raising the retirement age. On paper, it makes perfect sense. People live longer, so they could work longer. But when France attempted this, protests erupted nationwide, trash piled up in major cities, public services shut down, and approval ratings for the government collapsed. Voters saw it as losing a right they had already earned. Cutting benefits is another option, but it carries even heavier consequences. In countries like France, large numbers of retirees depend entirely on their pensions just to get by. In Japan, many older adults already live in relative poverty, meaning even a small reduction in support could push hundreds of thousands of people below the poverty line. Rising inflation only deepens the problem, shrinking the purchasing power of each payment even when the nominal amount stays the same. There's yet another complication in the pension debate. Older voters, who rely heavily on these benefits, turn out in elections at far higher rates than younger generations. They also have the most to lose from any reforms, which gives politicians a strong incentive to keep benefits fully intact, even if that choice puts long-term pressure on the national budget. When leaders can't cut spending, their next move is usually to raise more revenue, often by increasing the financial burden on younger workers. But higher payroll taxes land hardest on people already struggling with housing costs, student loans, and rising inflation. In many countries, younger generations are losing faith that they'll ever see the benefits they're paying for. And if taxes increase too much, young workers with portable careers can simply move to places with lighter financial burdens. Another proposed solution is privatization. In theory, shifting retirement savings from the government to individuals reduces long-term public costs. Chile once embraced this idea, replacing its national pension system with privately managed accounts. At first, it was praised internationally and even inspired reforms in other regions. But over time, the cracks showed. Many workers couldn't afford to contribute enough, and economic downturns wiped out investment gains. The result was far smaller pensions than promised, triggering mass protests. The government eventually had to intervene and guarantee minimum payouts, essentially rebuilding the system it tried to replace. Other nations have taken a different approach with self-funded retirement plans that encourage saving through tax advantages. Australia's superannuation program, often called SUPA, is a well-known example. It requires employers to contribute to an employee's retirement fund, creating a mandatory savings system built directly into the workplace. Australia's retirement system works differently from most. Employers are required to put a portion of each employee's income into a personal retirement account, and workers can add extra contributions of their own. Both are encouraged through favorable tax rules designed to help people save more. Over time, these contributions are invested in stocks, bonds, and real estate, building a sizable nest egg that can supplement, or even replace, the need for government-funded pensions. After decades in place, the system has grown into one of the largest pools of retirement assets in the world, worth more than the country's entire annual economy. On paper, this shifts responsibility away from the government and reduces long-term pressure on public pension programs. But the trade-offs are significant. The generous tax advantages that fuel the system also cost the government a substantial amount of revenue each year, money that could otherwise support healthcare, education, or infrastructure. And the benefits are not evenly distributed. Higher-income Australians gain the most because they're able to contribute more and take full advantage of the tax breaks. Meanwhile, lower-income workers often rely on the same public pensions the system was supposed to ease. So, yes, the model works, but mostly for people who were already in a strong financial position to begin with. In the end, every country faces the same political paradox. Everyone agrees that pension reform is necessary, yet no political leader wants to be the one to push it forward. The longer governments delay, the harsher the eventual solutions will need to be. Still, a few nations have taken action instead of waiting for a full-blown crisis. Denmark is one of the strongest examples. Instead of choosing a fixed retirement age, the country ties it directly to life expectancy. As people live longer, the retirement age rises automatically. This avoids constant heated battles over reform and gives citizens decades of clarity to prepare. Germany and the Netherlands follow a similar approach, linking their pension age to demographic trends and essentially saying, if we live longer, we work longer. Then there's Sweden, often viewed as the gold standard for pension reform. When its old system began collapsing under demographic pressure, lawmakers completely rebuilt it rather than patching it. They adopted a notional defined contribution system, where each person's benefits are tied to what they pay in. And payouts automatically adjust if the economy slows or if people live longer. When the global financial crisis hit, benefits dipped slightly, but the system remained stable. And because the rules were transparent, it avoided chaos or public backlash. Other countries are trying more targeted fixes, means testing, reducing or eliminating pension payments for wealthier retirees has gained traction. It's controversial because it challenges the idea that everyone gets back what they contributed, but it helps direct limited resources to the people who genuinely need them. Australia and Canada already use versions of this approach. In Australia, retirees with high incomes or large superannuation balances receive reduced public benefits. In Canada, low-income seniors get extra support through a supplement that gradually phases out as earnings increase. New Zealand takes a slightly different route. Everyone above a certain age receives a universal pension, but it's taxed like regular income, which means higher-earning retirees effectively return more of their benefit through taxes. It's simple, transparent, and maintains a sense of fairness. This approach offers a clearer and more transparent way to support retirees while still keeping the system fair for everyone. And while no country has a perfect solution, there are valuable lessons to learn. Nations that act early, like Sweden and Denmark, show that gradual automatic adjustments are far easier on society than dealing with a sudden crisis later. People need confidence that the retirement system will still exist when they reach old age. They need to know the rules won't shift overnight, and that what they contribute today will matter tomorrow. Reforms that are predictable, transparent, and fair help build that trust. And if economics teaches us anything, it's this. The longer we ignore a problem we can see coming, the more devastating the consequences become when it finally hits. If pensions really are financial time, bombs, and governments can't agree on how to fix them, it might be time to consider ideas that sound a little unconventional. One example is a proposal from investor Bill Ackman, suggesting that every newborn should receive a small amount of money at birth, invested on their behalf, so their retirement is secured long before they ever enter the workforce. It's a bold idea, and controversial, especially given who's proposing it, but that doesn't automatically make it wrong. If you're curious about how this concept works, you can check out the video linked on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.